Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. I'm Lindsay Reiser, and we wanted to recap what we know about last night's shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Police have arrested the man they say exchanged gunfire with law enforcement after allegedly rushing a security checkpoint at the dinner in Washington, D.C. on Saturday night. President Trump and top members of his cabinet, members of Congress, were quickly evacuated, and the lone suspect was apprehended. He has been identified as 31-year-old Cole Allen from California. The interim chief of police for D.C. said the suspect charged the checkpoint with a shotgun and was also armed with a handgun and multiple knives. Investigators believe he was targeting members of the Trump administration. FBI agents searched the suspect's home in Torrance, California. The U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, said he will be charged with 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence and a second crime of assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Let's bring in CBS News national security contributor A.T. Smith. He's also a former deputy director of the U.S. Secret Service. And we know, thank you for being here. We know that a Secret Service agent who was wearing a vest was shot and was released from the hospital, is expected to be okay, which we're thankful for. Secret Service contends the shooter didn't get within 120 yards of the president. So that said, from your vantage point, was security protocol followed?
They certainly followed the security protocols in terms of evacuation of the protectee and having a security plan that involved, obviously, the magnetometer operations, making sure that all of the guests inside that ballroom were screened. The question, and no agency is harder on itself than the Secret Service, that has to be asked is what allowed that individual with a shotgun and apparently a pistol to be able to get that close and be able to breach at least that magnetometer checkpoint. Now, keeping in mind the ballroom, I believe, was already filled and there was not a line or anything like that to be magged. So it sort of gave the individual a clear shot in terms of running down that corridor. I think that's something the Secret Service will look inward at and, make some adjustments, I think, to hopefully make sure something like that doesn't happen again.
I mean, that said, how complex and challenging is it to secure an event like this at a public hotel, no less?
It's very challenging. I mean, you have to balance what the needs of the White House or the staff and the hosts of an event like that with security. I mean, in a perfect world, the Secret Service would like to keep the president and all other protectees on the White House complex and never let them leave. But the reality is they do, and they need to be accessible to some degree to not only the public, but events like this. So there's a little bit of give and take between a host or a staff in terms of trying to provide that sort of accessibility to the protectee, and at the same time, the Secret Service to try to make sure it is as secure as it possibly can be. There's never, a plan that you can unequivocally say with 100% certainty will not falter in some way, but the Secret Service does a really good job of that, and as you can see, to secure a place like the Hilton Hotel with that kind of an event, hundreds of people, and then allowing the Hilton obviously to operate like it normally would with guests who are coming and going. So it's very challenging, but for the most part, the service does it every day, day in and day out. They will just have to ask themselves this question about this individual and how he did get through that checkpoint with a shotgun.
I want to ask you something that some people have been asking about on social media. Some videos are showing that Vice President J.D. Vance appears to be pulled from the table of dignitaries before President Trump is. This is that video now. So you see J.D. Vance being whisked away. President Trump is still there at the table. Eventually, he is whisked away. But what do you make of this moment?
I don't really make anything of it. I mean, again, you've got to realize that what precipitated the evacuation is radio traffic. Someone got on the radio and said shots were fired. Somebody made a call, we need to evacuate right away. So I wouldn't make anything out of that. In fact, they got the vice president just seconds before they did the president. But at the same time, they secured the president very quickly. And as you can see, the counter-assault team moved in and covered the president and the first lady. More so than they really did the vice president, who already was behind the stage there. So I wouldn't make anything out of that because it's simply seconds that we're talking about in terms of getting each of them up and moving. The important thing is to show somewhat of the security plan, that there was a plan to take them in different directions, to go different places. And I think that's the important part of what you see there in the evacuation.
Okay, A.T. Smith, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Let's bring in CBS News law enforcement contributor Rodney Harrison, former police commissioner for Suffolk County, New York, and a former chief of department with the NYPD. Anything that A.T. Smith said that you want to follow up on?
Yeah, well, a couple of things, and compliments to the Secret Service for neutralizing the threat and minimizing the amount of injuries that could have possibly have occurred. I mean, this individual bum rushed the magnetometer and did whatever he could do to get as close to the ballroom as possible. So compliments to them, and once again, very, very dangerous job and putting their lives on the line. And God bless, and hopefully for a speedy recovery for the one Secret Service agent that was unfortunately injured.
Do you think that Secret Service is going to go over the events last night and make adjustments to protocol from now on?
Well, that's what we do in law enforcement. We take a closer look at, were there any vulnerabilities or mistakes that were done? We're our own and biggest critics when it comes to an incident like this. I also believe that there should be a briefing, not just within the law enforcement world that was covering this, but also for the public to kind of get a better understanding of how this could have possibly happened and what can we do as a community to possibly identify somebody that is looking to harm or hurt some type of political figure or an administration that looks like it might have been targeted in this case.
Thank you so much. All right, let's go to CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman. She will be covering tomorrow's court appearance for the suspect, and you were nearby. Katrina, what did you see and hear from your vantage point?
Hi, Lindsay. Great to be with you. So I had just left the hotel shortly before this happened and was walking into an event that was hosted by Substack as we saw this news break about shots being fired in the ballroom where the dinner was being held. People were socializing at this event. They really weren't checking their phones, even though these were all journalists. So I actually started breaking the news to people, and they quickly went to see what was happening. They also made an announcement where we were that they were locking down the party. They wanted us to shelter in place there. They blocked off the roads. They told us that they thought that we were safe where we were, but it obviously really changed the tenor of this entire night.
I mean, you may have known more, but then the people in the room, Nancy Cordes told us at the top of the show that they didn't have great cell service. And so what they were hearing was sparse inside the ballroom there in the basement. Who is talking to investigators right now? Is the suspect? Is the suspect's family?
So our understanding right now is that the suspect is not cooperating. However, his family members are talking to law enforcement. We've learned they have been sharing information, and that will be very crucial as we try to get more insight into why this happened, what motivated him, what led all of this to unfold at the White House Correspondents Dinner last night.
What are you going to be watching for in court?
I mean, I'm curious what the charges will ultimately be. Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., has talked about a couple of the offenses that he will face so far, but we are still waiting for the complaint to be unsealed. It's possible we could also see a charge of attempted murder of a president, attempted murder of a vice president, of federal officials. This man could absolutely face life in prison, Lindsay, and I'll also be watching to see what he is like in court. What is his expression like? What does he say? There's so much that you can learn from seeing the suspect when they're actually brought into the courtroom. So we will all be watching very closely.
Okay, Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much.
Thank you.